Congratulations, you have just found the #1 over 50 health and wellness podcast on the planet. Hello and welcome to the Over 50 Health and Wellness Show. I'm your host, Kevin English. I'm a healthy aging expert and the founder of the Silver Edge, and I am on a mission to help men and women just like you build lean, strong, healthy, capable bodies they love for the rest of their lives. So today we've got another edition of the Coach's Corner. No guests, it's just me, and we'll be back next week with our normal interview format. But today I want to talk to you about something that's very near and dear to my heart, very personal to me, and that is overcoming the dreaded skinny fat condition. And the reason this topic is so near and dear to me is that this was me. This is my story. At one point in my life, somewhere in my probably mid-40s, I was the poster child for skinny fat. So if you or someone you know happens to fall into the skinny fat category, then stick around. We're going to talk about what skinny fat is and, most importantly, of course, what you can do to overcome this dreaded skinny fat condition and build your leanest, strongest, healthiest body ever. All right, folks, before we jump in and define exactly what skinny fat means, what that condition is, and before I give you some tips on overcoming this, I just thought I'd spend a couple of minutes sharing my personal story with you. Now, if you're a longtime listener to this podcast, you've heard this story before, I'm sure. So at some point in my mid-40s, I was in the worst shape of my life, and just my deteriorating health ended up with me spending a few days in a hospital. And this was, of course, a direct result of these health complications that I was having at the time from being in this condition of skinny fat. So for me personally, I was never really obese. At my heaviest, I was maybe 20, perhaps 25 pounds overweight, and that's at my heaviest here in the mid-40s. But I was very, very much skinny fat. So I had this additional 20, maybe 25 pounds of body fat on me, but at the same time, I was very weak and very undermuscled. Now, let's back up a little bit. In my 30s, I was actually pretty active, and I think that probably rolled into my early 40s as well. I was an endurance guy. I had got talked in. One of my brothers said, "Hey, dude, let's go run a marathon." I ran my first marathon with my two brothers. It was amazing. They were both like, "Okay, there's bucket list done, never again." And I went on to run a whole bunch more and then got hooked on triathlons. But I was just very much hooked on the almost addicted to endurance events until one day I wasn't. So somewhere in my 40s, I just quit. I quit cold turkey. Now, because I was doing all of this endurance stuff, all these marathons, just all this time on my bike and in the water swimming for triathlons, etc., I was getting away with leading what was otherwise a pretty unhealthy lifestyle. I just ate whatever I wanted because I could get away with it. And by whatever I wanted, I mean the standard American diet. Lots of fast food, really no vegetables because I didn't like them. Just primarily, I think, looking back at that time, lots and lots of highly processed carbs. I was kind of subsisting on that. But again, because I was so active with cardio type stuff, I remained pretty thin, not a healthy thin, not a sexy thin, just skinny, basically. But then, of course, I stopped. Somewhere in my mid-40s, I just quit. I quit cold turkey. I sold my triathlon bike, and the biking, just side note, was my least favorite part of of triathlons. I really did not like biking, never really have. But I just quit cold turkey. But I didn't quit eating the way I did when I was running all the time, biking all the time, swimming all the time. And of course, I had other bad habits. I was stressed out of my mind. I was drinking to kind of help me daily and kind of help me manage the stress and just doing a lot of things that were not really healthy for me. And what happened was I ended up skinny fat. And what I mean is I had this big belly, I had man boobs, but I had these really skinny legs and skinny arms. So we might call that the classic dad bod, or for our age demographic, maybe granddad bod or grandma bod for you ladies out there. But just not a great look. As it turns out, a very unhealthy look as well. All that visceral fat, as we're going to talk about, no bueno from a health perspective. So I didn't feel good. I didn't look good. And of course, all this ended with me going to being rushed to the hospital, spending a few days there. It turns out there wasn't any one major thing wrong with me. There was a bunch of little things wrong with me. I was just in horrible metabolic shape overall. And on my follow-up from that hospital visit, my general practitioner, I went back to him. And he gave me this advice, hey, Kev, if you don't want to end up being, dead with a heart attack before 50, you need to get your act together. You need to exercise and go on a diet. And so that's what I did. I spent the next probably couple of years going back to what the only exercise I really knew, which was endurance stuff. So I started running again. So I was doing all this running, and I was trying, just unsuccessfully mostly, to diet. And so basically what happened is I went from being slightly overweight to being skinny fat. I went from being very, very unhealthy to being slightly less unhealthy. At no point during this phase of my life where I was really trying to cut my calories and I was trying to add extra miles to my running week did I ever build a body that I was proud of. And I never felt like I do now. I feel like I'm superhuman. I feel fantastic. But I didn't feel that way then. And it took me years to get from there, from trying to diet and do all this constant cardio, to where I am today. So I think you guys get the idea, but let's just go ahead and let's define what we mean when we say skinny fat. So skinny fat is a condition of having a high percentage of body fat and a low percentage of muscle. So very often skinny fat people have a quote unquote normal body weight or a normal BMI, and that's a body mass index. And there's a medical term for skinny fat. You'll often see this kicked around as metabolically obese, or I've also seen it in medical literature described as normal weight obesity. In other words, these people, when you look at them and they're clothed, you don't automatically think, oh, that person is overweight, but this person certainly has a serious health condition known as skinny fat or this metabolically obese condition. Now, there's a bunch of health risks that come with having a high percentage of body fat compared to a low percentage of muscle. And that's things like that you might imagine, right? It's high levels of insulin resistance, it's high cholesterol, it's high blood sugar, all of these things leading to diabetes and heart disease. It causes inflammation and chronic diseases such as certain cancers, arthritis, and other inflammatory diseases. Low muscle mass, we also know, leads to weakened bones and an increased risk of osteopenia and osteoporosis. And really one of the biggest health risks of this skinny fat condition is premature death, just all-cause mortality. So Newsweek ran an article a few years back titled, "Why Being Skinny Fat Could Be Just as Dangerous as Being Obese." And in that article, they state that older adults with a normal BMI, which is well known to be a very imperfect measurement, but that the article says that older adults with a quote-unquote normal BMI, but high levels of body fat are at a greater risk for cardiovascular disease and death than previously realized. People with normal weight obesity, that is normal BMI and high body fat, found that they have a significantly higher risk of metabolic problems and death from these diseases than any other group. So think about that. People with this normal weight obesity condition have a higher risk of metabolic problems and death from these diseases than any other group, meaning even morbidly obese people. In addition, an article from the Journal of Clinical Interventions in Aging warns that sarcopenic obesity, that's code word for skinny fat, is linked to a decline in functional memory, mental flexibility, orientation, and self-control, all of these symptoms commonly seen in Alzheimer's patients. So in other words, this condition, the skinny fat condition, might be more dangerous than just straight up obesity. An obese person might have enough muscle mass to make up for the metabolic effects of the greater amount of body fat. In other words, this condition, skinny fat, might be more dangerous than straight up obesity. It's possible for an obese person to have enough muscle mass to make up for the metabolic effects of the greater amount of body fat. If you think about a strong man or a power lifter, so if you Google strong man or power lifter woman, strong woman, oftentimes these people's body composition could only be described as overweight or obese, but they're insanely, insanely strong. So that person, while obese, has got quite a bit of muscle on their body. So that percentage, again, of body fat to body muscle may make that quote-unquote obese person much healthier than a skinny fat person with a quote-unquote normal BMI or normal weight. And furthermore, an obese person tends to carry most of their fat as subcutaneous body fat. Now, don't get me wrong, that's not great from a health perspective, but skinny fat people tend to store more of their fat as visceral fat. And visceral fat is the fat we store around our organs, and it's definitely linked to a higher risk of type 2 diabetes, insulin resistance, heart diseases, even certain types of cancer. And today, there is a new school of thought that's being popularized by Dr. Gabrielle Lyon. We talk about her a lot on this show. She's got a New York Times best-selling book called Forever Strong. If you guys want to check it out, great book. But she has coined this term muscle-centric medicine, and she proposes that muscle is the organ of longevity. In fact, she goes on to state that we have less of a health issue with being over fat than we do with being under muscled. And this is doubly true for our age demographic, right? So talking to people in their 50s and 60s. All right, so now we know what skinny fat is and we know what the dangers are. What's our plan? What do we do about this? And I want to propose a three-prong approach, basically a three-step blueprint for overcoming skinny fat. So this is our skinny fat solution. And the three phases are going to be eat right, move right, and recover right. Now, before we jump into each of these phases, the eat right, move right, and recover right, let's just talk about the most common problem here when we get to skinny fat. And this is certainly what I faced. When I went to my general doctor, he said, Kev, you need to lose weight. You need to go on a diet. He didn't recognize that I was ridiculously under-muscled. He only saw that I was over fat. So his advice was to exercise, and he didn't discriminate between what type of exercise, and to eat less food. And for most of us in this skinny fat condition, that's a horrible recipe. It's a horrible prescription. We are not going to overcome the skinny fat condition by doing tons of cardio and eating less food. But there's this conundrum that we have, those of us that are skinny fat. We have excess fat, but we have low muscle. So which problem do we tackle first? And I see so many people doing what I did. We decide, hey, I gotta lose, if you're a guy, I gotta lose this belly fat. I gotta lose these man boobs. If you're a lady, you're just as likely to be storing your fat in your legs or your hips or somewhere else on your body that's not so flattering. So which problem do we tackle first? Do we tackle the excess fat or do we tackle the low muscle? I'm here to tell you right now, the first problem we tackle in order to efficiently and effectively overcome this condition is we tackle the low muscle first. We're going to address that excess fat through building muscle, but also we have in a separate phase, we're going to talk about how we tackle fat loss. But let's jump into this first phase. Remember our three phases for this blueprint for this skinny fat solution is going to be, we're going to eat right, we're going to move right, we're going to recover right. So when I say eat right, first things first, what I mean to say is do not diet. So let me repeat that. Some of you are thinking, okay, I'm skinny fat. I need to eat less food so I can get rid of this fat. Do not diet. Do not start your diet now. There's a time and a place for diet, for calorie restriction. It's not now. If you are currently in a skinny fat state, one of the worst things you can do metabolically, health speaking, and for body composition for that matter, if you want a lean, toned, sexy body, dieting's not what you want to do right now. You do want to do it, you just don't want to do it yet. And this is one of the biggest mistakes I see. People are going to, perhaps like me, they go to their doctor and their doctor says, okay, Mrs. Jones, or okay, Mr. Jones, I want you to exercise and lose weight because you're in the skinny fat condition. Don't do that. There's a time and a place for that. It's not now. So first things first, in our eat right, we're going to not diet. So I think I made that point pretty clear. The next thing I want you to do is get a baseline on your nutrition. We need some facts on where we're going from here. And the best way to do that is to weigh, measure, and track everything you eat and drink without changing what you're currently eating and drinking. So download an app on your phone. MyFitnessPal is the most common one, but there's tons of them. If you just Google food tracking app, I know it's a pain in the ass, but invest in a kitchen scale. They're like $20 on Amazon, and weigh, measure, and track everything you eat and drink for a minimum of a week. Now, what this is going to do, it's going to do a few things. One is, as you're weighing and measuring everything that you eat, you're going to get a new perspective on serving size. So you're going to be able to look at the difference between, say, a 4-ounce piece of chicken and an 8-ounce piece of chicken. You're going to see the difference between 1 tablespoon of dressing and, say, 4 or 5 tablespoons of dressing. But you're going to get a good idea of what portions look like. You're also going to get an idea of how many calories you average a day. So if I have a week's worth of total calories and I add them all together, so take 7 days of total calories, add them together, divide by 7, that's the average number of calories I'm eating in a week. So I'm going to get that information. I'm also going to know how many of those calories are coming from carbs, how many are coming from protein, how many are coming from fat. We're going to put a pin in that because we're going to come back to that in just a minute, but you're going to get that education as well. I'm guessing if you don't currently track, you don't know that. Now, you'll also see some other things. Depending on what app you're using, you're going to be able to see how much fat you're getting, how much saturated fat, how many vitamins and minerals and fiber and all this wonderful things. You'll also see, especially if you track for longer than a week, you'll start to see some trends. A lot of us eat pretty consistently, say Monday through Thursday, and then the weekends all hell break loose for some of us. But we'll also be able to see some trends in our eating. Do we eat significantly more calories on the weekend and then really low calorie on the weekdays? Things like that. But there's a bunch of reasons why you should get a baseline on your nutrition. You should know your numbers. And that's going to be a starting place for you to conquer this skinny fat condition. So first things first, we're not going to go on a diet yet, but we are going to get a baseline on our nutrition. So without changing the way we eat, because a lot of times what happens is we download MyFitnessPal and then we get what we call the halo effect. Us nutrition coaches know this very well when we ask our clients all the time, I want you to eat and drink like you normally do. And what happens is they have their app open in front of them. They're getting ready to eat a couple Twinkies and they think, I don't want to put a couple Twinkies in MyFitnessPal. And especially if I know my coach is looking at it, I want you to, if you normally eat Twinkies and have a glass of wine after dinner, that's what I want you to put in your app. You want an honest assessment of a baseline of your current nutrition, right? Okay, so that's what we're going to do first. We're going to get this baseline. And then from there, we're going to reverse diet. Yep, you got some excess body fat on your diet, and I'm telling you right now that what you should do is to eat a little bit more food. Not a lot more food, but a little bit more food. We're going to talk about what foods we eat here in just a minute. But a reverse diet, and we've done whole episodes on reverse diets. You can go back through and look for podcast episodes on that. But a reverse diet's basically what it sounds like. It's a strategic plan to slowly bump your calories up week over week. Let's take a classic example. Let's take Mrs. Smith. She's on Weight Watchers. She does her baseline. She finds out she's eating 1,250 calories a day. That's her average over a week. For her, she might spend the next week eating 1,350 calories, and then the next week 1,450, and then the week after that, every day she'll eat 1,550, and on, right? So she's just slowly by 100 calories each, adding 100 calories each week to her diet. So she's on a reverse diet, meaning she's just adding a tiny bit more food. She is now in a calorie surplus. That's going to be important. Sounds a little counterintuitive right now, but bear with me. That piece is going to be very important, critical, in fact, as we move into the second phase. But for right now, we're going to get a baseline on our nutrition. We're going to start a reverse diet. We're going to eat a tiny bit more food each week, week over week, so that we're slowly and consistently building how much food we eat. Now, the next thing I said, hey, what we eat is absolutely important, and the foods that we want to eat are going to be real whole foods. We want to avoid highly processed foods at all costs. Those are not your friend. They're not your friend no matter what your body composition is. They're doubly, triply not your friend if you're in the skinny fat condition, especially those really highly processed carbs. We don't want those anywhere near us. So the first thing we're going to do when we say what we're going to eat is we're going to eat real whole foods. And the second thing we're going to do when it comes to what we eat is we're going to eat 1 gram per pound of ideal body weight of protein. Now, since we have a baseline on our nutrition, we know how many grams of protein we're averaging each day. We can go back and look through our MyFitnessPal or whatever app you're using, and I took an average of total calories every day. I can get that same average for protein. Every single day, we're going to get 1 gram of protein per pound of your ideal body weight. So let's say Mr. Jones is 170 pounds and he wants to weigh 180 pounds. He's aiming for 180 grams of protein a day. Mrs. Jones, let's say she's 130 pounds and she, at this point in her journey, she thinks she wants to weigh 120 pounds. That's fine. We'll go with that. She wants to get 120 grams of protein a day. And I'm here to tell you that's a lot of protein. For most of you listening to this, if you are not already eating a high protein diet, that can be kind of overwhelming. So we want to work up to where we're eating 1 gram of healthy protein every single day. And a pro tip here is to get an early start on that. In other words, have a high protein breakfast early in the day. And when I say high protein breakfast, I don't mean 2 eggs and a piece of toast. An egg is a superfood. By all means, you should eat it, but 1 egg has 6 grams of protein. If you're a woman trying to get 120 grams of protein, you need to eat 25, 30 grams of protein at a minimum for breakfast. If you're a dude and you're trying to get 180 grams of protein, you got to get a whole bunch of protein there in breakfast to get ahead of the curve. All right, so we want to get a baseline on our nutrition. We're going to weigh, measure, and track everything without changing the way we eat for about a week, maybe longer. We're going to reverse diet, which is, like I said, we're going to strategically but slowly eat a little bit more food. So we're in this slight calorie surplus. And the foods that we're going to be bumping up are going to be protein, obviously, because we're trying to hit this ideal of 1 gram per pound of ideal body weight. And we're going to be trying to swap out some of those really highly processed foods. And we're going to be consistent. So if you are serious about getting out from under this skinny fat condition, you're not going to get away with it by being quote unquote good Monday through Thursday and then just kind of going off the rail on the weekends and then getting back on track on Monday. We really are looking for consistency, not perfection, but just consistently making better choices, getting your total calories in so that you're not under eating, getting that protein in, really, really critical. All right, so that's our first phase in this framework. We're going to eat right. Now, you know what I mean when I say eat right for skinny fat. Next, we're going to move right. We need to build muscle. We've already identified the fact that skinny fat is we are under-muscled and over-fat. And we've decided that we're going to tackle one of these problems first, and that's going to be under-muscled. So we need to build muscle. The number one way we build muscle is strength training. It's lifting weights. It's not cardio. It's not a class. It's not booty burn. It's not F45. It's not Orange Theory. It's not CrossFit. It's lifting weights. It's strategic strength training. So our movement plan then, at least in this phase, again, there's a time and a place for everything. We're going to stop doing freaking so much cardio. Walking is your new cardio. You're going to walk 10,000 steps a day, or at least a minimum of 7,000 steps a day is what we tell our clients here. But we don't want you doing a whole bunch of intense cardio, spin classes, going to Zumba 5 days a week. We want you to stop that. And there's a metabolic reason, because when we do this constant cardio, we're sending a competing signal for building muscle. And you might be thinking, well, hey, wait, I build lots of muscle when I'm doing my Peloton, or when I'm out going for my run, or when I'm in my F45 class. Kind of. What you're doing is probably maintaining type 1 muscle, or that slow twitch muscle. In other words, if you Google elite marathoner, you're going to see a very frail, skinny, weak body. If you Google elite sprinter, you're going to see a very muscular body, the opposite of the endurance athlete. And what you're seeing expressed there is the difference between type 1 and type 2 muscle. The marathoner has type 1 muscle, which is, if you can look at them, it's not a whole lot of muscle, right? The sprinter is expressing type 2 muscle. They've got a lot of that type 2 muscle, which is the type of muscle that we're talking about when we want to improve our metabolic health. As we age, we have this term sarcopenia, which means age-related muscle loss. It's not that type 1 muscle that we're losing so much. It's that type 2 muscle. And look, to be clear, we're not losing it because we're aging. We're losing it because we stop having a need for it. That type 2 muscle is very metabolically expensive. In other words, it takes more calories every day just to keep it on your body. So your body's going to preferentially pare that down if you don't absolutely have a need for it. In order to send the signal to our body that we have a need for this type 2 muscle, we are going to do strength training. We're going to lift weights. Nothing crazy. 3 days a week of 45 to 60 minutes of full body workout is perfect. But what you're looking for is a professionally designed, age-appropriate functional strength training workout program. Now, let me unpack a little bit of that. So professionally designed, not something that you just find online by some 20-year-old ripped kid. And it's not you just wandering around sort of aimlessly in the gym or at home, just kind of going through a circuit. It's not following the Carolyn Circuits lady on YouTube or somebody else like that you might be doing. But it's a professionally designed program that's specific for muscle building, for type 2 muscle building. It's age appropriate. And by age appropriate, what I mean there, again, it's not written by some no pain, no gain 20-year-old gung-ho kid. And it's not something that's going to put a pair of 1-pound pink dumbbells in your hand and tell you to, do half squats or something like that. Unless, of course, that's appropriate for where you are now. I suspect that most of you tuning into this, that's not who you are. But age appropriate means that we're doing functional compound movements that mirror real world movements. So we're squatting, we're hinging, we're pushing, we're pulling, we're working on full range of motion in our strength training program. So that's what I mean by when I say professionally designed, age appropriate, functional strength training workout programs. There's some great ones out there. Here at the Silver Edge, we have a couple of really good professionally designed, age appropriate, functional strength training workout programs. The first one we have is the Over 50 Fit Foundations program, and this is a 10-week, 2-phase program that is designed for you that are beginners. So you're either brand new to working out, or maybe you're very deconditioned and you just want a starting place, don't know what to do. This would be a perfect program for you. It could be done in a gym or at home with very limited equipment, but that's the Over 50 Fit Foundations. And then we also have the Lean Body Blueprint workout program. This is far and away our best-selling program. And this is a 6-month program, and it's broken up into 5 phases to keep you progressing through. For this one, you'll need either a well-equipped home gym or a gym membership. But both of those would be perfect for if you're looking for something that's professionally designed, age-appropriate, functional strength training programs. That's what these are. And both of these programs are delivered through our custom app. So there's videos of all of the exercises that you'll be asked to do. You've got your full history in there. It's all the things that you would expect in a good workout app. We've got all that in there. And if you guys are interested in checking those out, you can head over to the show notes for this episode, which is in whatever app you're listening to this in, or it's over at silveredgefitness.com/313. You can find links to both of those programs there. You can check those out. You can also use coupon code podcast20. That'll save you 20% off of either of those workout programs. But look, I don't mean to go on and on pitching you on our programs. But whether you use our program or someone else's, you are looking for a professionally designed, age-appropriate functional strength training workout program. I just want to leave you with that impression. Now, the other thing we need in our prescription for Move Right, we're going to stop freaking doing so much cardio. We're going to find a good, professionally designed, age-appropriate functional strength training workout program that's perfect for us. The other thing that we're going to do in this Move Right prescription is we're going to apply the principles of progressive overload. Now, that might sound fancy, but all that means is that every time we repeat an exercise, we're going to do just a little bit more. So I guess a good way to illustrate this is just to use an example. Let's just say a bench press. I think most people know what a bench press is. You're laying on a bench and you have a barbell or dumbbells and you're doing reps. So we're going to say that your prescription is you're going to do 3 sets of 8 to 12 bench presses with 1 minute of rest in between. Okay, so you with me? 3 sets, meaning we're going to do it 3 times. So I'm going to pick a weight that's challenging, but I can do for, let's just say in our case, 8 times. So I'm going to do 8 bench presses, and then I'm going to put my weights down. I'm going to rest for 1 minute. Then I'm going to go to second set. I'm going to do 8 reps, and that number of reps is challenging but doable, and I can do it with perfect form. I'm going to rest for 60 seconds. Then I'm going to do my third and final set of 8 reps. I'm going to put the weights down. Okay, I'm done with my bench presses for today. Next time bench presses come up, I'm going to keep a couple of those variables the same. I'm going to keep the weight the same, and I'm going to keep the rest period the same. But this time, I'm going to do 9 sets of whatever weight I did last time. I'm going to rest a minute, then I'm going to do 9 reps, then I'm going to rest a minute, then I'm going to do 9 reps. So that's what I'm going to do the second time I do that exercise. The third time I do that exercise, I'm going to do 3 sets of 10. Then the next time, I'm going to do 3 sets of 11. So that's the idea of progressive overload. Now, in our example, we said our rep range is between 8 reps in 12 reps. So what happens when I get to 12 reps? So now I'm doing 3 sets of 12 reps with that same weight. Well, now I add some weight. So I make it heavier and more challenging, and I go back down in reps. So maybe I add 10 pounds and now I'm doing 3 sets of 8 again. And then the next time I go, it's 3 sets of 9, then 3 sets of 10. I think you get the gist. But we must apply the principles of progressive overload or we won't build muscle. So there's a couple of things that must be true for us to build muscle. And remember, that's our mission here. Our problem is that we're overfat and undermuscled. And we want, in this phase, to build muscle. We want to get stronger. And in order for our bodies to increase the amount of muscle in our body, it has to have a very compelling reason to do that. And the way we do that is, one, we eat in a slight calorie surplus. Remember, we said we're going to be reverse dieting. We're going to get plenty of protein. We're going to need those amino acids for building blocks for muscle. And we're going to apply this principle of progressive overload. Now, there is one third part of the equation for building muscle, and we're going to talk about that in phase 3 here in the recover right piece. But for right now, just know that we need a good program. We need a program that's designed to build muscle. We need to follow that, and we need to be consistent with that, but we also need to apply these principles of progressive overload. Okay, so now we know what we mean by eat right and move right in order to build muscle. The next thing we need to do, the third phase of this framework to overcome skinny fat condition, is to recover right. We're eating right, we're moving right. Now we need to recover so our bodies can metabolically adapt. And when I say metabolically adapt, I mean build muscle. So I told you that in order to build muscle, certain conditions have to be true. We've got to be eating in a small calorie surplus. We've got to be getting enough protein. We need to have a professionally designed program or a purposely designed program for building muscle. And we need to be applying the principles of progressive overload. But we also need to be able to recover, because when we are in the gym and actually doing our workout, and you probably know this, we're not actually building muscle at that moment. We're actually tearing muscle down. We're making these little micro tears in our muscle fibers, which is a good thing. And we want to have that little bit of breakdown of muscle tissue when we're in the gym. And we certainly want to recover from that, but we want to go one step further. We don't want to just break down some muscle and recover back where we were. We want to break down, recover, and then adapt. This metabolic adaptation. In other words, we want to build muscle. In order to do that, we need a couple other things here. First things first, the most obvious, I think, when it comes to recovery is we don't want to overwork out. So going back to our Move Right prescription, remember I said 3 times a week of 45 minutes to 60 minutes of full body workouts is perfect. And when I say that's perfect, I mean it's perfect. You might be thinking, well, if 3 days a week is good, wouldn't 4 days be better? And if 4 days a week is good, wouldn't 5 days a week be better? And heck, maybe I work out every single day because I'm really committed. Nope, 3 days a week is perfect for what we're looking for. In other words, we want to work out maybe every other day. Now, look, are there other ways to structure workout programming that are effective? Absolutely. We could do body part splits. We could do a bunch of different things. But for most of us, for a starting place, you can't go wrong with 3 days a week of 45 minutes to an hour of full body workouts. You just can't. That is a really, really good framework to start with. So you don't need 4 days. You don't need 5 days. So when I say recover right, we need to recover. So we're going to do workout, say Monday and Wednesday and Saturday, for example, and we have those rest days in between. So that's going to allow us to recover. The next thing we need to do is optimize our sleep. Really, when we talk about building muscle, oddly enough, this is where muscle building actually happens. Specifically, it happens in that deep phase of sleep. So we want to optimize our sleep. By optimize our sleep, I mean we want to optimize our healthy sleep. And let me be clear, when I say optimize healthy sleep, what I'm talking about is a minimum of 7 hours a night of sleep. Not time in bed, but actual healthy sleep. Now, some of you go-getters are out there thinking, Kev, I do just fine on 5 hours of sleep. I'm here to tell you, no, you don't. And it's probably one of the big reasons why you're stuck in skinny fat. Shoring up your sleep is the foundation of over 50 health, A, and B is one of the best things you can do for muscle building. It seems kind of weird. You're like, okay, Kev, I get it. I should be drinking my protein powder and I should be hitting the gym. Gotcha. But sleep, I'll sleep when I'm dead. No, sleep is where we're going to actually build muscle and make these metabolic adaptations when all these wonderful hormones are being released. So we want to optimize our sleep. Now, we've done podcasts on this in the past. We've done whole episodes on optimizing your sleep and some tips there. So if you're looking for that kind of info, feel free to look back through our catalog and listen to those. But you do want to optimize sleep in order to build muscle. In fact, let me back up. You don't want to, you must. You must optimize your sleep. If you eat perfectly and you do the move right perfectly, but you have really crappy sleep, you'll see some progress. You're not going to see great progress. End of story, period, full stop. You just won't. So optimizing your sleep is an important piece of this puzzle. And then the next thing I want to talk about when we talk recover right is managing stress. And look, we live in stressful times. And I'm not saying that you manage the actual stress or like world events or current culture or maybe family dynamics, things that are outside of your control. Maybe you've got work stress, which I would argue may or may not be within your control. But really what you do have control over is how you process this stress, how you manage this stress. Again, we've done whole podcast episodes on how to manage stress. Definitely go back and check some of that out if that's an area where you struggle. But know this, when we have this stress, this chronic stress in our life, this, especially that low level chronic stress that's increasing cellular inflammation, that is no bueno. That's the exact opposite of what we want when it comes to A, being healthy, and B, building healthy muscle. So having some sort of stress management system in your life, whether that's prayer or meditation or taking relaxing walks or spending time with love, whatever that looks like for you, lean into that. You must be able to manage your stress and not be constantly overwhelmed. You just, again, kind of like sleep, if you're constantly stressed and in this very inflamed state, it's going to make it really, really hard to escape that skinny fat condition. And then I'll leave you with this last tip when it comes to recover right, and that's this. Consider minimizing alcohol. And look, I don't want to be a buzzkill here, but alcohol is not your friend. From a healthy metabolism perspective, it is metabolic poison. And look, I know that sounds extreme and it's drastic, and I recognize that you could potentially get greater good from alcohol by connecting deeply with your loved one over a glass of wine than any small amount of metabolic damage that you do with that. But that being said, drinking consistently, and now I'm talking from moderate to heavy drinking. Myself, I was at one point in my life, I was a heavy drinker. I drank daily as a way to unwind and deal with stress. That's a metabolism killer. That is going to stop you from building this lean muscle. That is going to stop you from getting out of this skinny fat condition. It's not to say that you need to give up alcohol altogether, but it is to say that you should have some sort of strategy just for, if you're a moderate to heavy drinker, for just reining that in a little bit in consideration of your overall health and in consideration of you reaching this goal of not being skinny fat. So I just wanted to leave you with that last one there. So there you go. There's our framework for if you are skinny fat today, this is where I would start. I would start with eating right. I'd start with moving right. I'd start with recovery right. I'd put all of those things in place. And you may be listening to this and go, but okay, what about the fat part of skinny fat? Let's say I eat right, I move right, I recover right. You had mentioned do not diet. That was your first advice when it came to eating right. What about the fat part? Now look, a couple things here. So first off, if you're not currently strength training and you start strength training and you start a sensible reverse diet, you're in this very magic place where you can burn fat and build muscle at the same time. We call that body recomposition. That's really, really tricky to do for resistance trained individuals. So people that are already strong, it's really hard for us to build muscle and lose fat simultaneously. Some would argue that it's impossible. But that's why we focus on one thing or the other. In our case, we want to focus on getting strong. But for those of you that have never strength trained before, or for those of you that have, it's been a long time, or for those of you that are cardio people and you stop the cardio and move into a strength training phase, you are going to have a period of time where you burn fat and build muscle at the same time. But here's the deal. Even if you don't lose a gram of fat, but you add even a modest amount of muscle, you've improved your body composition. In other words, your body fat percentage has decreased by you adding muscle. So think about it. If you had 50 pounds of lean muscle on your body and now you have 55 pounds of lean muscle on your body, but your body fat is the exact same number in pounds, you have decreased your body fat percentage. Your body composition is better. I tell people this all the time. I say, look, and this is for people that are more obsessed with the weight on the scale, which I know some of you out there in the skinny fat condition are. If you were to gain 5 pounds of muscle and lose 5 pounds of fat, you would weigh the exact same, obviously. That's net zero on the scale. So the scale hasn't budged, but I can promise you this, you look and feel dramatically different. Dramatically better. Your health is 100% improved in that case, and you look great. Friends that you haven't seen for a while are going to be, oh my God, did you lose weight? And in fact, you didn't. But you've gained muscle and lost fat, so the scale hasn't changed, but your body composition has changed dramatically. So my advice to you that are worried about the fat part of skinny fat is this: be patient. This was my mistake early on, back in my probably late 40s. God, I would flip-flop back and forth between trying to build some muscle. I'd gain a tiny bit of muscle and I'd be freaking out about my belly fat, and then I'd go on a cut. I'd start dieting to lose that belly fat, which would stop me from gaining any muscle and probably lose a little bit of muscle. And I would just go back and forth, which is a great way to get very unremarkable results. Let me tell you, from years of experience, that doesn't work. And a lot of times those of us that are in this skinny fat condition, we're stuck there. We're like, oh, I don't like this fat on my body, but I want to build some muscle. I get that I would look better if I had some more muscle, but we don't have the patience to play this long game and to have this strategic roadmap. So my first advice for you is just be patient when it comes to the fat loss. Again, those of you that are deconditioned or have never worked out before, you're going to see some fat loss as well as muscle gain at a nice clip early on. Now, that being said, there will come a time when you want to shift your focus from muscle building while minimizing fat gain to burning fat while minimizing muscle loss. Now, this is your diet phase. This is your calorie deficit phase. But for most of you skinny fat folks that are listening to this, I would strongly urge that you delay that at least for a few months. So if you're listening to this episode when it drops, we're dropping 2 weeks before Christmas. I think this goes out on December 11th, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe consider focusing on this muscle building phase for the first 3 to 4 months of the year. So those of you that have, let's say you're skinny fat and you're thinking about starting a diet January 1, please don't. If you're skinny fat, if you know somebody who's skinny fat, talk them out of dieting for the first few months of the year. And do the things that we talked about. Focused on building some muscle first, and then move into our diet phase. And this should set you up very nicely for the summertime. So if you spend, let's say, January, February, and March, maybe as a bonus, we'll throw in April. We spend 4 months really working on building muscle, and then we move into a fat loss phase. You're going to have much more success in fat loss than if you just try and, January 1st, my resolution is to lose this belly fat once and for all. That's going to be a temporary fix. You and I both know that. And it's going to leave you in a metabolically unhealthier place than you are right now. And we already know that skinny fat is a very metabolically unhealthy place to be. So if we work on muscle building for 3 to 4 months till the end of March at least, maybe till the end of April, then we move into a diet phase. Again, this would roll us into the summertime with more of the body composition that we're looking for. Now, when it comes to dieting, this is actually pretty simple. You're going to want to cut 15 to 20% of your current calories. And look, your current calories should not be low at this point, because remember, we've been reverse dieting for 3 or 4 months. And now maybe you haven't reverse dieted that whole time. Maybe you've only reverse dieted for 6 weeks or however long it takes you to get to a healthy maintenance calories, but your calories are not low. You're eating more food than ever at this point. You're feeling strong. You're feeling capable. Your lifts are getting stronger across the board. But my point is, your calories are not low when you start a diet. Remember, we said Mrs. Smith was eating, 1,250 calories coming from Weight Watchers. She doesn't want to go on a diet from there because she doesn't have any room. What are you going to do? Eat 600, 700 calories? That's horrible. It's miserable and it's dangerous. It's unhealthy. But let's say she's eating 2,200 calories a day. Now she's got some room to actually diet. So that's what I'd say. I'd just slash your calories, 15-20% of your current calories, providing you're eating plenty of food. And you want to spend the next 6 to 8 weeks. So maybe that's the month of April and half of May, or all of May and half of June. And then you're going to want to do that reverse diet back to those higher calories. So remember that reverse diet's that slow, strategic reversing, adding 100 calories, let's say, a week until you're back to maintenance calories. So let's finish up with this. Overcoming my own skinny fat condition was life-changing for me. And I don't want you to listen to that and take that lightly. When I say it was life-changing for me, I mean it was life-changing. It changed my life dramatically. I'm a different person now, today at 60, than I was when I was 45, 46, 47. I went from the worst shape of my life in my mid-40s to the best shape of my life, objectively best shape of my life, the strongest, healthiest, most vital I'd ever been in my life in my 50s. And I'm maintaining that now that I'm 60. And I feel amazing. And look, I don't want to brag, but I look way better today at 60 than I did in my 40s. I'll go so far as to say I probably look better today. I certainly feel better today than at any point ever in my life. That's pretty crazy. Now, those of you that were collegiate athletes, I didn't set the bar very high for myself. So maybe it's fair to say, okay, Kev, yeah, you can be in the best shape of your life or have the best body of your life ever at 60, because I didn't set that bar very high. But for those of you that find yourself today, for whatever reason, in your 50s and your 60s, in the skinny fat condition, I want to tell you that overcoming this can be life-changing for you. So, if you or someone you love is in this dreaded skinny fat condition, put this 3-step framework into place and kick that unhealthy skinny fat body to the curb for the rest of your life. Okay, that's our show for today, folks. If you've enjoyed this podcast, I want to let you know that we have other free resources over at silveredgefree.com. There you'll find our free guides with our top tips on nutrition, exercise, and healthy lifestyle to assist you in your weight loss and fitness journey. So feel free to head over there and download anything that looks useful to you. I'll put links to everything we talked about in the show notes, and you can find those over at silveredgefitness.com/313, or you can find them in whatever app you're listening to this episode on. As we wrap up our time together today, you can show your support for this show in 2 important ways. The first is to tell a friend about this podcast and encourage them to give it a listen. The second is for you YouTube folks to click the like and subscribe buttons, and for you podcast folks to please give this podcast a 5-star review on whatever platform you listen to podcasts on, and be sure to subscribe and follow so you don't miss any future episodes. I really appreciate you spending your time with me today, and until next time, stay strong.